Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads on this Saturday morning. I hope everybody's staying safe out there. Not such great weather, but here we go. We have a football game to talk about on Sunday, and they're going to be battling with some uncomfortable weather, too. So I wonder how that's going to impact the turnover game, which under Jalen Hurts, I do feel comfortable with. It's just, well, Mother Nature is handing us a little bit of difficulties to deal with. There's a lot of questions I'm going to be asking throughout this show, and really the end result or the end goal is I want to see how they get answered on Sunday, so then when we speak about it when the game is over, we can kind of reflect on what I was wondering. We get the big news. Things did shift for me Friday afternoon when Avante Maddox was listed as out. That's a big deal. I mean, look, Christian Kirk, I'm not telling you they have weapons that are just unbelievable filth. They don't have Devontae Smith. They don't have an A.J. Brown. But they do have structure at the position, and Kirk can do some damage. And Avante Maddox was balling. Okay, that dude was playing phenomenal football. And Christian Kirk out of the slot, 126 of his snaps out of 198 have been in that position. So now the question becomes, what does Jonathan Gannon do? Here are his options. You can throw Josiah Scott in there and keep everything as it is. Keep C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety. Keep Darius Slay on the outside and just plug and play at that position. We know they like doing that with their offensive line, and I would think a lot of teams prefer to switch one position instead of multiple. But it is intriguing, if you think about it, knowing what C.J. Gardner-Johnson can do, to put him there and then maybe throw Kayvon Wallace in as your safety. What I would do to begin the game, and I would be active on my toes, and I would be willing to adjust accordingly. I don't know if Jonathan Gannon is, but how I would start is putting either Zach McPherson or Josiah Scott in at corner, at nickel corner, and just see how it goes from there. If things go south, if things don't look good, I'd be willing to maybe throw some different ideas and concepts out there. Like, yo, CJ, we need you here, kid. We know you're versatile. We know that your bread and butter in the most recent years have been at nickel. Let's go. I don't know at what point then do I feel great about what's happening at the safety spot between Marcus Epps or Kayvon Wallace. But if it's getting torched, you need to be able to think, okay, mid-game, we have to try something new. We have to do a different look. I'm fascinated on what they do. Now, what else you can do, and I think this would be the worst option, I'm just throwing it out there, you could put Slay there, and then Zach McPherson, who did step in for Darius Slay when he was injured last week, on the outside. The problem is, I'd rather go down swinging with Darius Slay, if need be, on the outside on some coverage, than Zach McPherson, because that's when scary things can absolutely happen, and I don't want to sign up for that. So that would absolutely be sort of where I would go worst case scenario. I'm just looking at every possibility that they can do. And this is a big one. This is no joke. Is it game changing for me? I don't believe so. I do know this. When fully healthy, when Maddox is there, I'm still highlighting that matchup. Where can the Jags generate success? What matchups are they probably looking at to think, okay, we can move the ball here? They probably are looking at Christian Kirk to do some of their damage. So it was highlighted regardless if it was Scott, if it was McPherson, or if it was Avante Maddox. I obviously feel a lot better if it's your top dog, but someone's got to step up. So it really, for me, just to put it in perspective, went from I think they cover to I don't know if they necessarily cover anymore. I want to see this team handle adversity. I do. This is a big-time adversity hit. Just like if they go down 7-0, if they're down 14-9 at the half, I'm just saying, right? Obviously, I want them to succeed. I just know football's weird. The Bills lost last week, even though the Bills are still going to be a powerhouse. Teams lose. Teams are in uncomfortable spots. If the Eagles are down, how do they look? It's easy to play when you're up by double digits. It's easy to play when you score 24 points, bang, 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 consecutive drives, you're putting the ball in the end zone. What if you do struggle a little bit? How do they bounce back in-game? How do they assess at halftime? I think this offense is going to flourish. I do know they generated a ton of success last week with the 50-50 balls. What happens if, not saying it will, what happens if? Remember, this is me questioning show. That's the idea behind the show. What if one of those 50-50 balls to Devontae Smith ends up being an interception? What if one of those 50-50 balls, it ends up not being a catch right there at the goal line and Devontae Smith can't come down with it? Not because he's bad, but because, well, they're 50-50 balls. Sometimes the cornerback smacks it down. Sometimes he puts it on the ground. Like that type of stuff happens. Does the offense look the same? Especially if they can't generate anything in the run game. This Jags defense, when you look statistically, it's eye-opening. To be fair, when you're winning a lot, though, are other teams running the football against you. So their run defense have some really good statistics. When you're winning 24-0, the other team has to drop back and throw the football a ton, in theory, to come back in the game. So will that skew a bit how things are being handled? It doesn't mean they don't have playmakers. Of course they do. Josh Allen, Devin Lloyd. It's going to be a test. Like, I'm excited. I feel great about the offensive line, though. Who wouldn't feel great about Mailata, Kelsey, and the crew, Lane Johnson? We know what they're capable of. But I'm sure they're going to get home. The difference is Matt Ryan in Indianapolis is not the same, which we have a threat that can maximize some unreal plays with his legs and escape. Where if something was to go wrong, he somehow manages to get 10 and he moves the chains by escaping. And it's like, damn, what am I supposed to do there? We did everything right. But Jalen Hurts, yeah, there's a reason why he's flourishing. Because he's a dog. I'm expecting the Jags to come out fired up. The way Doug Pederson has made them leap. They're loving it. They're going from Urban Meyer to a dude who won a Super Bowl. And I'm sure coming back to Philadelphia, he has them inspired to kick some ass. That's great. But I know the fans, especially coming off of that Monday night, which was outrageous, is thinking the same thing. All right, Doug, you rise your team up. You get your locker room going. We will get ours. And I promise you, the 60-plus thousand will be able to be louder and be more intense than whatever the hell you think you're bringing. Are the Jags good? I think they're better than one of the worst teams we've ever seen under a horrendous coach in Urban Meyer, so kudos to you. But if you look at the Lions and you think to yourself, the Lions are a 7-win football team, which is good for them. I'm sure anyone in Detroit would sign up for 7 victories this season under Dan Campbell. Before they put their foot off the gas, though, it wasn't even close. It wasn't a contest. It was all Eagles. It was a beat down. If this Jags team is in that range, a 7-win football team, which would be great for Trevor Lawrence, which would be great for what they have. It's a big leap. Well, if the Eagles looked one way against the 7-win football team and against the Minnesota Vikings, which I think are significantly better than those level of teams. See what I'm saying here? I'm just laying it out. It's a week-to-week league. Strange things occur. I'm just kind of giving you my thought process and where it's kind of at. Will Doug run on this team? It's funny, right? Doug Pederson, the run game, in what world? I'm starting to wonder how much of the league goes, I don't want the football in the Eagles' offense hands. Let's take away time. Let's keep their offense on the sideline. Let's try and get them out of their rhythm. And let's bleed some clock. Is that where we are? Let's play the clock management game. We have the best chance to succeed by keeping A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders, and the rest of the crew off the field. That's a positive that we have that type of generation in the offense that people are scared, which is great. I'm trying to think of Doug Pederson's approach. And is it possible that they can run on the Eagles? When the Eagles take a lead, just like I said with the Jags' defensive numbers being skewed, squads don't necessarily go, all right, we're going to run ourselves back into this one. Hey, Carson, let's hand it off a billion times because we're down a bunch of points. Just doesn't happen that way. So credit to the Eagles for doing what they do, even though Swift was something. At the same time, though, that's what the Lions needed in week 1. He was there. He was the guy giving you any sort of life, and he was the pulse of the team. I just expect there to be holes in that department when you look at what they can provide. That's where I think that there is a possibility of a hole. It's taken Doug some hiccups along the way to figure that out at times, and that's why we screamed and demanded him to run the ball in years past. Does he recognize it already, though? And I don't know necessarily, speaking of the Eagles' defense, who Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox are. Was last week a product of the Washington football team or the Washington Commanders and Carson Wentz and where that offensive line was? Or are they actually spry? Do they actually have some young youth in them? Do they go drink from the fountain of youth and they're ready to explode? It's probably somewhere in between. There's probably a little more lifetime as Brandon Graham gets a few games under his belt, coming off of the big injury, just getting a better feel-out process, feeling more comfortable out there, getting used to his moves, getting his timing right, beating some offensive linemen that way. It's probably a little bit of both. But there's been plenty of times in the recent, not just this year, but a bit last year, where it's like, come on, how much does Fletch have left in the tank? I don't know what last week was. I don't know if that's more of the norm. I don't know if it's an in-between. I think it probably is more of the in-between. But I'm excited to see how they answered the bell to that. What else? Can the Eagles establish the run? Boston Scott's out. Not the biggest loss in the world. Plug it in Sermon. He brings something different. When will he be used? We know he can be tough. We know he could be a hard runner, but I also wonder why. Why did he fail previously? What went wrong? Because there were some high expectations on what type of back he could be in this league, and it flopped. Clearly a tiny role if he does get the ball, but we've seen that role be an important role, the tough runner. I know that 92-year-olds out there who watch Eagles football want there to be a fullback again, and want nothing but hard-nosed running 24/7 without realizing how the game has changed intensely. So I'm sure they're loving it, even though they're going to probably be underwhelmed when they realize his usage. But I'm fascinated. Is there something by the goal line where they plug away? Even though we know that they're probably going to try and do everything for Miles Sanders to score some touchdowns for some confidence stuff. I wonder if Sanders is getting beaten down a little bit. We're only a couple weeks in, but it is something to monitor. That first week, he looked fresh. He looked like he was shot out of a cannon. Not so much last week. And I want to give credit to Washington because they do have players on that defensive line that I think forced the run game to look the way that it did. I just know there's always lingering issues with Miles. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was something that was somewhat limiting him all around. Yeah, that's basically where I'm at for this game. We're going to take some anytime hotline calls to hear from the people. Now, I'll say this before we go there. It cracks me up that Douglas Pederson said to the Philadelphia media he never saw that Philadelphia statue. Come on, Doug. Look, I'll never have a statue built of me in my entire life, and I understand that. If there ever was to be a statue built in my name, I'm going to that motherfucker the second it is revealed, and I'm taking pictures with my family. I'm bringing my dogs. I'm walking by it every single day when I go get my Starbucks, my Wawa, my Dunkin', you name it. I'm going every day. The fact that this man actually thinks it would be, something to tell people that he didn't, I don't understand. Why would you lie? There's no way you didn't see it. You'd be a dope to not go see your own statue. I'm just being honest. That's Dougie P being Dougie P. I think this is what he's doing. When he was here, he was forced to lie so much. That's how Howie and Jeffrey Lurie operate as a business. Lie, 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 lie. And I thought the Eagles were bad because Nick Sirianni will talk for about 7 minutes when asked a question, and he won't even give you anything even close to the response that you're looking for. Really, it's that awful. Then I hear Mac Jones. Then I hear Bill Belichick. We're taking it day by day. 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 That's what the responses are every single time they were asked over and over again about Mac Jones and where his current updated status is with the injury of the high ankle sprain. And speaking of high ankle sprains, I haven't seen anything yet about the severity of where Avante Maddox is, but I pray it's nothing serious because, well, yeah, I mean, high ankle sprains can keep you out for a little bit of time. Just funny to me with Doug. But he's going to get a loud standing ovation, I'm sure. They'll throw something up on the Jumbotron, and that place will go nuts. We somewhat debated a little bit on the radio. Will there be any idiots that boo? Just because they think they're Philly tough, that's what we do here. We boo. The thing is, it would be hard for it to be directed towards Doug, and I don't think anybody's going to do it. Just play with me here. And if it is when he runs out the tunnel, if those jerk-offs do find it funny after a couple cold ones in the parking lot, a couple shotguns here and there, a couple funnels, some fireball shots as they're passing around the fireball whiskey. If they're doing when they're running out the tunnel, you just think you're booing the team anyway. Anyway, just a silly little side conversation. But, all right, we'll take some phone calls here on the Anytime Hotline. Let's get a pulse of where the fans are heading into Sunday afternoon.
What's good, bros? Been listening for a minute. You're killing it on the radio. I think Fast Batman needs some more love. Quez is everything we were promised for Jalen Reagor. And, I mean, Reagor sucks. We all know this. But it's nice. It's nice that we got Quez to make up for that. Dude's a beast. Doesn't get as much shine because half his yards come from getting a PI penalty, but hey, I mean, just as good as a completion pretty much. So, yeah, just need to call in and give Fast Batman some love. You're killing it. Stay killing it. Peace, dog.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Quez Watkins, yeah, I always figured this would be his role once they acquired A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith and A.J. are going to be such a high focal point for everybody, and there's so much stress and anxiety to make sure that you stop them or at least limit them because they're scary. Fall asleep, enter Quez Watkins. And you're right. I mean, there were a lot of times previously that he would just cause a flag. Someone's got to tug on his jersey, or they jam him a little bit late after he gets going off the line of scrimmage, because guess what? He can beat you long, and he can beat you deep. And then you're boned pretty much if you're back there. You can't handle that. There's not many that can handle that level of speed. And when your top dudes are looking at A.J. Brown, right? I mean, think about what level of cornerback is matched up against that guy. And he's not fully polished, and he's not fully electric to, an unbelievable level. But there is enough in that speed that's all you need at times. I mean, you can get the job done at an effective enough rate. I'm not here taking shots at Quez. Because, well, if he did have all the tools in the toolbox, he could be. With that way of running, if he was polished like an A.J. Brown, I mean, you're talking about one of the most dynamic wide receivers there are in the league. It's crazy what he can do and how much that opens up the rest of the offense. Speed kills in this damn league. And I have been brutally disgusted with the lack thereof for so many years. So you're right. We always focus on the offensive line. We focus on Jalen Hurts and the two weapons. The sexy ones, right? The ones that are sexy to everybody because they're making the highlight reel and they're motion receivers. And Jalen Hurts is installing plays that aren't even a part of the playbook to score some touchdowns. And think about that, confidence-wise. There was no way in hell Jalen Hurts was doing that last season. There was no way in hell that he ever was going to have that level of confidence walking up to a line of scrimmage last year. Yeah, something that's not in the playbook, let's go right now. It just shows and defines where he has matured so much. There's a lot of layers to his maturity. But come on, man. This Jalen Hurts, he's a special watch right now. I think he feeds. As much as he plays it down, as much as he pretends like it's not a big deal, I think he feeds off of details around the game. He gives us the cliche stuff, but I think that fuels him. For example, Doug coming back, knowing the emotions for us as a fan base and us as an organization to Doug, knowing that Doug wants to stick it to the Eagles. Trust me, when he left Jeffrey Lurie's place, when he was told that he was no longer going to be the coach here, and he walked out when they had that conversation, I believe it was down in Florida, my man was loving every second. My man felt like he could breathe again. My man went golfing for 40 days straight because he couldn't even remember a time where he felt so mentally free. You don't think he wants to stick it to us? I think that gives Jalen Hurts this motivation that he just swallows and embraces. I think Justin Jefferson. You saw what happened when Jalen Hurts, when they were scoring touchdowns, he went for the gritty. And it was like a sarcastic gritty. It was towards Justin Jefferson because that's what he likes to do when he scores touchdowns. Knowing the Rager Jefferson thing, I think he uses that to his advantage, even though he plays it down and he plays it cool. So that's why I'm expecting a fun one, on top of just the fact that he's been ridiculous this season. But I appreciate the phone call and the Quez love and the love of the radio show. Thank you very much. Next call.
Hey, Hunter, here's my thoughts on the Eagles-Jaguars game. I think there's two key factors here. First of all, you got the weather. I heard it's going to be pretty wet and nasty in Philly for the game. That could be a huge factor, turnovers and the like. And the other one that I don't think is getting a lot of talk is the Jaguars going from the West Coast last week in California and traveling all the way back east for the game. That's not easy to do. I think this game, and this seems to be the general vibe lately, is going to be close. I think the weather is going to keep it close, but I'll pick the Eagles 20-16. Simply, again, they're the home team, and again, I think to have a good year in the NFL, you don't let teams come in your stadium and win. 20-16 Eagles.
I think it's an excellent point talking about the home field advantage, and I know it was the first day of the first home game of the season against the Vikings, and it was a Monday night game, which is different than the 1 o'clockers, even though I still feel it will be as crazy in there. It's hard, man. It's hard. I mean, Eagles fans are on the road in Washington, and they have to go with a silent count when they're trying to score a touchdown. If that's what it's like on the road, think about how brutal it is when you are that's when the Eagles fans are on the road. Think about what it's like when the Eagles fans are in their own barn and the place is going to a whole new level. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, you're right. There's a lot of variables here, right? When you're talking about the travel, talking about a young quarterback dealing with the travel. How many times, and maybe football is different because it's still once a week no matter what level you're playing at. But how many college basketball players do you hear when they go to the NBA? It's a different schedule. It's a different way of practicing. It's just a different way of life. A lot of games, a lot of back-to-backs, a lot of flying. Granted, maybe I'm reaching a bit because the college basketball season isn't 82 games, then 7-game playoff series, then the offseason, then you got to do it again. Your body breaks down. Is it possible for a young quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I think is a phenomenal quarterback, and there's a reason why we all praised his skill set coming out of Clemson. But is there something to getting adjusted? No, he was here last year, granted, in the NFL. But come on, I mean, your coach isn't flying back with the team. He's got his hands in the pants of some woman at a bar. Is he cheating on his wife? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. That's why a lot of these players, they got to be in the right position to have that success. For example, and maybe the kid can't play. I'm just using it. Maybe this part of the show is just me being ridiculous. Hear me out. If Sam Darnold goes to the Jets, and if Sam Darnold goes with Sean McVay, are you getting two versions of Sam Darnold? Now, maybe the ceiling still ends up not being good enough. I'm not telling you he'd be an unbelievable quarterback, but Jared Goff with Sean McVay is going to the Super Bowl. Is there a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo with Kyle Shanahan compared to Jimmy Garoppolo with Matt Patricia as head coach for the Detroit Lions when he was in Detroit? You know, a lot of this comes from where you are, what position you're in, who you're surrounded by. And Doug, with the success that he had with Carson Wentz before things went south, he was an NFL quarterback. I'm sure that's generating a little bit of some buzz right now between Lawrence and Doug. But is it becoming like, all right, the grind of the NFL season, still learning West Coast, East Coast? Sometimes I think that's put too much stock into it, but I think it's reasonable to bring up. I mean, how many times do you go, they lost that game because of the travel? I guess it's hard to pinpoint it because you say, well, they looked flat. They probably looked flat, and then you say it could have been the travel. I think I'm just rambling in circles at this point. But I'm laughing at the scores, right? Because what has the complaint been over the last couple of weeks? They can't score in the second half, but they're still scoring a lot of points. Yet, a lot of people are speculating in the 20. Well, they might win 24-17. They might win 24-20. They might win 27-20. All right, so that's what the projection is from some fans right now. Maybe lower scoring because of the weather. They've been scoring those amount of points in these games. I'm just saying, when you project this, they're going to win 28-21. Well, if they scored 24 points in the second quarter, let's say they scored 27 total, 3 in the second half, 24 in the first half, they're getting to the margin that you expect them to get to before kickoff. Yet when you see it, you get all upset. I almost knocked over my candle. That would have been terrible. All right, we'll take one more here.
Hey, bros. I wanted to discuss the Eagles game against the Jaguars. And when I was watching them play against Washington, the main thing that concerned me wasn't really their lack of scoring in the second half, but how they seemed really unable to run the football. Like, it seemed like the Washington Commanders were able to just stop any running back that the Eagles put back there, and it just seemed easy to them. And I feel like we have to get a better run game going against Jacksonville if we want to beat them, because that Jacksonville defensive line is no joke. And it also, I think it's not that they're not running the ball, it's that that they're unable to run the ball. And I don't know what's going on. Defensively, Maddox is out, and I hope that doesn't give Gannon the excuse to go back to his old ways, because I think there's still way too much talent here to not dial up an exciting scheme. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really good game. Fly, Eagles, fly.
If Jonathan Gannon changes everything because of a slot corner, then we got ourselves an issue at the defensive coordinator position. I will never forget what Jeff Mosher told me. It was after week 2 or week 3. He covers the Birds for Inside the Birds. Gannon just doesn't trust his guys. That's why you saw what you saw in earlier stages of this season, really week 1 and last year. He didn't trust his personnel. If he doesn't trust Scott, if he doesn't trust McPherson, and he uses that as an excuse to change, that's a problem to me. So, yeah, that is a fear in the back of my mind, for sure. I want to see a better run game, too. I have given credit to the opposing team's defensive front, but we also know we have one of the best offensive lines in football, and Jason Kelce gets to the second block like no other. Gets to the second layer to produce more blocks like no other. No excuses. You're right. Excellent point. Let's get the run game going. Washington did do a decent job of stopping it. That shouldn't be the case. It happens. It happens. But percentage-wise, it needs to be sharper in my eyes. All right? So my projection or my prediction is going to be, I wrote it down here in my notes. Did I delete that note? I might have. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to give you exactly what I gave you on 97.5thefanatic.com when we put in our scores. And it is, let's see, Jacksonville versus Philadelphia. I forget. It's been a long night last night. Long morning this morning. Whoa, did someone have them losing? Oh, they didn't put the actual score up there. They just put the record of everybody guessing. Okay. Well, I'll go with, I think I was going along the lines of a 28-24, something along those lines, a 27-24. I think it's going to be, that doesn't necessarily mean it's close at the end. Maybe there's a field goal. Well, I guess at that point, yeah, I mean, it could technically still be, but anyway, bear with me here. I'm breaking down. 27-24 Birds. I'll catch you on the next one.